It starts with a single thought. Something small. A decision you made, a word you said, a possibility that slipped away. You replay it in your mind, once then twice. You try to understand it, fix it, explain it. But instead of clarity, the thought multiplies. It twists into what-ifs, could-haves, and should-haves until your mind feels like a maze with no exit. This is overthinking, a silent mental storm where logic and emotion collide. At first glance, overthinking seems harmless, even responsible. After all, thinking deeply is a sign of intelligence. It's how we solve problems, make sense of life, and grow. But the moment thinking stops serving us and starts controlling us, it turns toxic. Instead of processing thoughts, we start looping them. We analyze feelings that don't need analysis, search for meaning where there is none, and replay conversations that already ended. It's like our brain forgets how to press pause. Science offers a clear view into this invisible storm. When you overthink, your brain's default mode network, DMN, the system active when your mind wanders, goes into overdrive. This network connects the medial prefrontal cortex, self-reflection, and the posterior cingulate cortex, memory and evaluation. It's the part of your brain that lets you reflect on your past, imagine your future, and form your identity. But when it's overstimulated, reflection becomes rumination. Instead of clarity, you get confusion. Instead of peace, you get paralysis. What's worse, your brain doesn't know the difference between thinking about danger and experiencing it. When you spiral into what-if scenarios, what if I fail? What if I said the wrong thing? What if I lose everything? Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, fires as if those threats are real. Your body responds with stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart races, your muscles tense, and suddenly you're trapped in a biological feedback loop. Your body feels anxious because your brain won't stop imagining threats, and your brain keeps overthinking because your body feels anxious. That's why overthinking feels exhausting. It's not just mental, it's physical. Each thought triggers emotional and hormonal responses. Your brain is working overtime, replaying scenes like a movie on endless repeat. The result is decision fatigue, irritability, sleepless nights, and a growing distance from the present moment. But here's the paradox. The brain overthinks because it's trying to protect you. It believes that by replaying every possibility, it can prevent pain, failure, or regret. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism gone rogue. Thousands of years ago, constant vigilance kept humans alive. Today, it keeps us trapped in our minds. And yet, even knowing this, we struggle to stop. Because overthinking often disguises itself as control. It gives the illusion that if we just think a little longer, we'll finally find certainty. But certainty never comes because life doesn't promise it. The truth is, overthinking doesn't protect you from chaos. It creates it inside your head. To break free, you must first recognize this pattern for what it is. A loop powered by fear, fueled by uncertainty, and sustained by habit. Once you see it clearly, you can begin to interrupt it. Not by forcing your mind to be silent, but by teaching it a new language, one built on trust, presence, and acceptance. Because the mind's greatest power isn't in thinking, it's in knowing when to stop. Overthinking isn't just a bad habit, it's a biological chain reaction. To truly understand why we get stuck inside our own heads, we need to look at what's happening beneath the surface, inside the circuits of the brain, where fear, logic, and imagination fight for control. When you overthink, it's not your thoughts misbehaving. It's your brain trying to solve a problem it was never built to solve: uncertainty. The human brain evolved as a prediction machine. It constantly scans for danger, fills in missing information, and creates stories to make sense of chaos. This was vital for survival when our ancestors faced real threats: predators, hunger, storms. But in the modern world, the threats aren't physical, they're psychological. What used to be "how do I survive this night" has become "what if I embarrass myself tomorrow?" or "what if I never succeed?" The brain doesn't distinguish between physical danger and emotional threat. To it, both are signs of possible harm. That's why even small worries can trigger the same fight-or-flight system designed for survival. The amygdala, our brain's alarm center, activates at the slightest sign of uncertainty. It sends distress signals to the hypothalamus, releasing adrenaline and cortisol, the same chemicals released during real danger. Your heart races, your breathing quickens, and your body prepares for action. But there's no tiger to run from, no storm to hide from, just your own thoughts. The prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, then steps in. It tries to analyze the threat logically. But instead of resolving the fear, it often magnifies it. You begin asking endless what-if questions, searching for control, trying to predict outcomes. The more your mind searches, the more uncertain it feels. The prefrontal cortex and amygdala start feeding each other, one generating worry, the other amplifying it. This feedback loop becomes the foundation of overthinking. Another brain region plays a hidden role here: the hippocampus, the memory hub. It records experiences, especially emotional ones. When you've gone through failure, embarrassment, or rejection, your hippocampus stores not only the memory, but also the emotional charge attached to it. So, when you face a new challenge, your brain recalls that emotion instantly. Even before you act, it reminds you of past pain. Remember what happened last time? This subconscious replay fuels anxiety and keeps you trapped in mental rehearsal. Overthinkers also have a more active default mode network, DMN, the part responsible for self-referential thoughts. It's what makes you reflect, imagine, and plan. But when it becomes overactive, it pulls you out of the present and traps you in endless mental time travel, reliving the past, anticipating the future, and rarely resting in the now. What's fascinating is that the very trait that makes humans intelligent, the ability to imagine and simulate future outcomes, is also what causes our suffering. We're the only species capable of constructing entire realities in our minds. This mental flexibility allows for creativity and problem-solving, but when misused, it becomes overthinking, imagination turned against itself. From a psychological lens, overthinking also ties deeply to perfectionism and control. Many people overthink because uncertainty feels intolerable. The brain, wired to predict, can't stand not knowing. It prefers the pain of overanalyzing to the discomfort of ambiguity. That's why we replay conversations, analyze every text, and mentally rehearse outcomes, all in a desperate attempt to feel safe. But the irony is, the more we think, the less safe we feel. And here's where neuroscience gives us hope. The brain is plastic. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. That means the more you overthink, the stronger that loop becomes. But it also means that with consistent awareness and new habits, the loop can weaken. Meditation, mindful breathing, and grounding exercises deactivate the amygdala and quiet the DMN. Over time, the brain learns that it's okay not to have all the answers. In truth, overthinking isn't a sign of weakness. It's a side effect of a brilliant brain caught in survival mode. You're not broken. Your mind is just doing too much of what it was designed to do: protect you. But protection without rest becomes imprisonment. The key isn't to stop thinking. It's to train the brain to know when thinking helps and when it harms. Because once you understand the science behind your thoughts, you begin to realize something powerful. The storm isn't stronger than you. It's simply energy misdirected, energy that can be reclaimed, reshaped, and redirected toward peace. Every thought begins with a feeling. Before words form, before logic steps in, emotion rises, a subtle pulse inside the body that tells you something matters. But when that emotion is uncertain, painful, or unresolved, the mind does what it knows best. It tries to fix it. That's how overthinking begins, not from thought but from feeling. The mind becomes a translator, desperately trying to turn emotion into explanation. The truth is, overthinking is rarely about the event itself. It's about how that event made you feel. When someone ignores your message, when a plan falls apart, when a decision goes wrong, it's not the situation that keeps you awake at night. It's the emotion underneath it. Rejection, guilt, shame, fear. These feelings are raw and unpredictable, so the brain tries to contain them by turning them into thoughts. Why did they act that way? Did I do something wrong? What should I have said differently? Each question is an attempt to regain emotional control. Neuroscience shows that emotions originate deep in the limbic system, especially the amygdala. It acts as an alarm, signaling the presence of emotional significance, something to pay attention to. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning, then steps in to interpret that signal. But here's the problem. The prefrontal cortex doesn't feel, it only analyzes. It doesn't understand sadness or fear, it just tries to explain them. So instead of letting the feeling pass through, it builds a story around it. And that story becomes the spiral. This is why overthinking feels endless. The brain can't think its way out of an emotion, because emotions aren't problems to solve, they're experiences to process. But when you avoid feeling them, they persist. It's like pressing down on water. It doesn't disappear, it just finds another way to rise. Overthinkers often live in this loop. Emotion triggers thought, thought magnifies emotion, and emotion feeds more thought. The loop tightens until the boundary between feeling and thinking disappears. The body plays a role too. When emotions arise, your nervous system reacts, heart rate increases, breathing changes, muscles tense. If you resist or suppress these sensations, your brain interprets the body's tension as more danger, fueling further overanalysis. But if you allow yourself to feel the emotion physically, noticing the tightness, the warmth, the heaviness, the nervous system begins to calm. This is the paradox. The way out of overthinking isn't through more thinking, but through feeling. From a psychological view, much of this comes from fear of vulnerability. Many of us are taught to fear emotions, to see them as weaknesses rather than signals. So we intellectualize them. Instead of saying, "I feel hurt," we say, "I don't understand why they did that." Instead of acknowledging fear, we search for certainty. The mind becomes a shield protecting us from feeling too deeply. But in doing so, it turns against itself. It replaces healing with analysis. Overthinking also attaches to identity. When a thought is emotionally charged, it feels personal. I failed. I'm not good enough. They don't care about me. These aren't facts, but feelings disguised as truths. The brain mistakes emotional pain for reality. And because the emotional brain limbic system processes information faster than the rational brain, you feel the pain before you can reason with it. This is why reassurance rarely helps. The mind wants logic, the heart wants release. There's a reason mindfulness and emotional awareness are so effective against overthinking. When you name what you feel, I'm anxious, I'm sad, I feel rejected, you engage the prefrontal cortex in a new way. Studies show that labeling emotions reduces activity in the amygdala, calming the emotional storm. It's called effect labeling. You're not suppressing the feeling, you're integrating it, acknowledging without judgment. That simple act can transform chaos into clarity. The next time you catch yourself overanalyzing, pause and ask, what am I really feeling beneath this thought? Often the answer isn't complicated, it's just uncomfortable. The brain's job is to protect, the heart's job is to feel. Overthinking happens when the brain refuses to let the heart do its work. To stop overthinking, you don't need to silence your thoughts, you need to make peace with your emotions. Because once you allow yourself to fully feel, the mind no longer needs to explain. The storm begins to quiet, not because the world has changed, but because you've finally stopped fighting what's inside you. Overthinking always begins with good intentions. It's your brain's way of saying, if I can just understand this, I'll be safe. The mind believes that by replaying the past and predicting the future, it can regain control. But the truth is, control is the very illusion that fuels the spiral. Overthinking isn't a form of problem solving. It's an attempt to control the uncontrollable. Humans are wired to crave certainty. From an evolutionary standpoint, our ancestors survived by predicting what would happen next, where danger might come from, how to secure food, when to move. The more they could anticipate, the better their chances of survival. But the modern world presents a different challenge. Most of our problems are not immediate or physical. They are emotional, social, and psychological. We can't fight them or flee from them. We can only think about them. So the ancient survival system tries to use logic to control chaos. And that's when thinking turns into overthinking. The brain's prefrontal cortex, the center of reasoning and decision-making, plays the biggest role here. It constantly seeks patterns, explanations, and outcomes. When faced with uncertainty, it goes into hyperdrive, trying to fill in every blank. But life doesn't offer clear data. There are too many unknowns, too many variables. So the mind keeps cycling, building stories on top of stories, mistaking effort for progress. It's like a computer caught in an infinite loop, consuming more power with every attempt to calculate what can't be calculated. This illusion of control gives a temporary sense of safety. Overthinking feels productive. You feel like you're doing something about the problem. You analyze the conversation you had, replay the words, imagine different responses. For a moment, it feels like control. But that control is fragile. It breaks the moment new uncertainty appears. The brain, desperate for security, starts the loop again. You can't stop thinking because your mind believes that stopping means danger. Psychologically, this pattern ties to anxiety and perfectionism. People who overthink often have a heightened sense of responsibility. They believe that if they think long enough, they can avoid mistakes, prevent regret, or predict every possible outcome. But life doesn't work that way. Perfection is an illusion, and uncertainty is a constant. When you fight uncertainty, you fight reality itself, and that's a battle the mind can never win. Neurologically, the need for control is linked to dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. When you find an answer, solve a problem, or predict something correctly, your brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the behavior. The mind learns, thinking leads to reward. But overthinking hijacks this system. It creates the illusion of progress. You feel like you're getting closer to an answer, but you're really just chasing the chemical rush of near certainty. It's a cognitive trap that keeps you chasing clarity that never arrives. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control your thoughts, the less control you actually have. Thought suppression, trying to force your mind to stop, activates the same neural circuits that produce those thoughts in the first place. Psychologists call this the ironic process theory. When you tell yourself don't think about it, your brain ensures that you do. It's like trying to calm turbulent water by hitting it. The harder you try, the more chaotic it becomes. The way out isn't through control, but through surrender. Not in the sense of giving up, but in accepting that not everything requires an answer. Acceptance activates a different network in the brain, the salience network, which helps you focus on what truly matters in the present. It quiets the prefrontal cortex and soothes the amygdala, allowing thoughts to pass naturally instead of looping endlessly. Acceptance isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's saying, I don't know what will happen, and that's okay. It's choosing trust over tension, presence over prediction. The most powerful people aren't the ones who control every outcome. They're the ones who can remain calm in uncertainty. Overthinking is the mind's attempt to hold on to a world that can't be held. But once you see that control is an illusion, you begin to find peace in unpredictability. Because freedom doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from learning to live without needing to. The moment you stop trying to control every thought is the moment you begin to reclaim your mind. In that stillness, clarity finally has space to emerge. Most people think overthinking is a problem of the mind, a storm of thoughts circling endlessly. But the truth is deeper and more physical than we realize. Overthinking doesn't just live in your head. It spreads through your entire body, rewiring how your brain, heart, and nervous system operate. Every anxious replay, every imagined scenario, every what if is not just a thought. It's a chemical signal, a biological event, a physical storm inside your body. When you start overthinking, your brain activates the stress response system, the same one designed to protect you from danger. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, sends a signal to the hypothalamus, which triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline, hormones meant to prepare you for fight or flight. Your heart rate quickens, your muscles tense, your pupils dilate, and your body prepares for action. This system evolved for survival. It was meant to save you from predators, not from your own thoughts. But the brain doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. So every time you overthink, replaying a conversation, fearing the future, analyzing every possible mistake, your body responds as if it's under attack. The danger might not exist outside of you, but inside, your physiology goes into crisis mode. Over time, this chronic stress reshapes your body in subtle but serious ways. Cortisol, when released occasionally, helps you focus and react quickly. But constant cortisol floods your system, leading to fatigue, weakened immunity, and inflammation. It affects digestion, sleep, and even weight. The hippocampus, responsible for memory and learning, starts to shrink under prolonged stress, making it harder to concentrate or recall information. Ironically, the more you overthink, the less capable your brain becomes of thinking clearly. This also explains why overthinkers often feel physically exhausted, not just mentally drained. The mind and body are in constant dialogue. When one is tense, the other mirrors it. Chronic overthinking leads to muscle tightness, especially in the neck, shoulders, and jaw. It disrupts breathing patterns. Shallow, quick breaths signal to your body that something is wrong, keeping the stress loop active. Even your heart starts to reflect your thoughts. Irregular heart rhythms and spikes in blood pressure are common among those who live in constant mental overdrive. Sleep, too, becomes a battlefield. Overthinking often strikes hardest at night. When the world goes quiet, the mind gets louder. As your body tries to rest, your brain replays the day or projects fears into tomorrow. The stress hormones that should be low at night stay high, keeping you alert instead of relaxed. Over time, this disrupts the body's circadian rhythm, leading to insomnia, brain fog, and a weakened ability to regulate emotions. Scientists have found that this state of prolonged mental stress doesn't just impact the nervous system. It affects the gut, the immune system, and even the skin. The gut-brain axis, a network of nerves and microbes that communicate between your stomach and your brain, becomes imbalanced under stress. This can cause digestive issues, bloating, and even changes in appetite. The immune system weakens, making you more prone to illness. And the skin, being sensitive to stress hormones, may break out or age prematurely. But there's an even subtler effect, one most people never notice. Overthinking changes how your brain networks communicate. Under normal conditions, the default mode network, DMN, the part of your brain active during daydreaming or reflection, works in balance with the task-positive network, which helps you focus. But in chronic overthinkers, the DMN becomes hyperactive, creating a constant hum of self-referential thoughts. It's like background noise that never shuts off. The brain becomes trapped in a feedback loop, thinking about thinking, analyzing the analysis, until focus and peace become foreign concepts. And yet, awareness is the first step toward healing. The body doesn't betray you, it simply mirrors the mind. When you learn to calm your thoughts, your body responds almost instantly. Breathing deeply sends safety signals through the vagus nerve, slowing your heart rate and lowering cortisol. Gentle movement, grounding exercises, and mindfulness reestablish the balance between the thinking brain and the sensing body. Overthinking feels like a mental trap, but it's also a physical one. The more you stay lost in thoughts, the more your body stays in fight or flight. But the moment you return to your senses, your breath, your heartbeat, your surroundings, the loop begins to break. Because the body always knows what the mind forgets, that you are safe right now. The danger isn't real, it's imagined. And once the body feels that truth, the mind begins to believe it too. Overthinking feels endless, like a whirlpool that pulls you deeper the more you try to escape. You tell yourself to stop, but that only fuels the storm. The secret, though, isn't to fight your thoughts, it's to retrain the mind. You can't silence your brain by force, but you can guide it, reshape it, and teach it to rest. Breaking the loop is not about thinking less, it's about thinking differently. The first step is awareness. Most of us don't even realize we're overthinking until we're already lost in the maze. Awareness means catching yourself in the act, noticing when your thoughts have shifted from productive reflection to repetitive rumination. This is a skill called metacognition, thinking about your thinking. It activates the prefrontal cortex, allowing you to observe your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. The moment you notice, I'm overthinking again, something powerful happens. You move from inside the thought to outside it. You become the observer, not the prisoner. But awareness alone isn't enough. The next step is grounding. When your mind drifts into the spiral, your body must bring it back. One of the simplest and most effective techniques is the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. This pulls your attention away from mental noise and anchors it in the present. It signals to your brain, I'm safe right now, which helps deactivate the amygdala and slow the overthinking process. Then comes the art of non-resistance. Overthinkers often try to control their thoughts, pushing away the negative, chasing the positive. But what you resist persists. Neuroscience calls this the ironic rebound effect. When you try not to think about something, the brain keeps checking to make sure you're not thinking about it. The solution is acceptance. When a thought arises, even an anxious one, acknowledge it gently. I see you, but I don't have to engage with you. Imagine each thought as a cloud drifting across the sky. You don't have to chase or fight it, you just watch it pass. Mindfulness meditation is built on this principle. Studies show that regular mindfulness practice reduces activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thoughts and overanalysis. When you meditate, you're not trying to stop thinking, you're learning to stop identifying with your thoughts. You realize that your thoughts are just mental events, not truths, not commands, not reflections of who you are. Another way to break the loop is through pattern interruption. Overthinking thrives on repetition, the same thoughts replaying in slightly different forms. The best way to disrupt that loop is through action. When you move, physically or mentally, the brain's focus shifts. Something as simple as walking, writing, or doing a creative task can interrupt the repetitive cycle. Movement increases blood flow to the brain and triggers the release of dopamine and endorphins, which naturally elevate mood and improve clarity. You can also train your mind through reframing. Overthinking often comes from fear of mistakes, rejection, or failure. But when you reframe uncertainty as possibility, the emotional charge changes. Instead of "what if this goes wrong?" you teach your mind to ask, "what if this helps me grow?" The brain is plastic. It rewires itself based on repeated patterns of thought. The more you practice reframing, the faster your mind learns to interpret challenges as opportunities instead of threats. Another essential step is setting boundaries with your thoughts. If your mind tends to overanalyze before sleep or during quiet moments, designate thinking time. 15 to 20 minutes in your day when you allow yourself to reflect, write, or process freely. Outside that time, if intrusive thoughts arise, tell yourself, "Not now, I'll think about this later." This technique, known as delayed worry, teaches the brain discipline and reduces spontaneous mental spirals. And finally, self-compassion is the foundation of all healing. Overthinkers tend to be harsh self-critics, analyzing every decision, replaying every word, punishing themselves for imperfections. But neuroscience shows that self-kindness activates the parasympathetic nervous system, promoting calm and emotional regulation. The next time your thoughts spiral, replace judgment with understanding. "It's okay that I'm thinking too much. I'm learning to let go." Overthinking is not a sign of weakness or brokenness. It's a sign of a mind that cares deeply, one that wants to get things right. But the mind must learn that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. When you allow life to unfold without dissecting every second, your brain begins to rest, and clarity naturally follows. The truth is, your thoughts are not the enemy, your attachment to them is. And once you learn to loosen that grip, overthinking loses its power. The loop breaks not because you forced it to stop, but because you no longer fuel it. When the mind finally learns to let go, something beautiful happens: silence. And in that silence, you find not emptiness, but peace. There comes a point when you realize overthinking isn't just a bad habit. It's a pattern of the mind that has written itself into your neural pathways. Every time you spiral into thought loops, the same circuits fire. The same worries, the same fears, the same what-ifs. And like a path through a forest walked over and over again, it becomes easier to travel each time. The only way to stop overthinking is not by avoiding it, but by creating new paths. This is what it means to rewire your brain, to teach it that peace, not panic, can be its default state. The science behind this is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, grow, and reorganize itself through experience. Your thoughts are not just mental events. They are electric impulses that shape your brain's structure. Every time you react to a worry with panic, you strengthen the neural connection between fear and thought. But every time you notice a worry and respond with calm awareness, you weaken that connection and strengthen a new one built on trust and acceptance. Over time, this rewiring transforms your brain's landscape. What once felt automatic, the constant analysis, replaying, and doubting, starts to lose its grip. To rewire your brain for peace, the first principle is consistency. Just as overthinking became powerful through repetition, so does healing. Daily mindfulness, even 5 minutes of focused breathing, trains your nervous system to stay grounded. When you focus on your breath, the inhale and exhale, you activate the vagus nerve, which slows the heart rate, reduces cortisol, and signals safety to the brain. With enough repetition, your body learns that calm is not the exception, it's the baseline. The second principle is reconnection. Overthinking isolates you in the mind, a constant chatter between you and your fears. To escape that isolation, you must reconnect with the world outside of your thoughts. This is where sensory grounding, movement, and real human connection become essential. Simple acts, touching the earth, walking outside, laughing with someone you trust, pull you out of your inner noise and remind your brain that life is happening now, not in your imagination. The third principle is focus. The human mind can only hold one dominant thought at a time. When you give it something meaningful to focus on, it has less space for worry. This is why people who engage in creative or purposeful activities, painting, writing, volunteering, learning, often experience less anxiety. Purpose rewires your attention network, pulling it away from self-referential thought and toward constructive engagement. The more you train your mind to create rather than ruminate, the more naturally peace begins to take root. But rewiring also requires something deeper: forgiveness. Overthinking often stems from unresolved guilt or shame, a mind stuck in the past, replaying what it wishes had gone differently. Yet, holding on to the past doesn't change it. It only traps you in its gravity. Forgiveness, both for yourself and others, isn't about erasing what happened. It's about freeing your mind from its endless replay. Neuroscientists have found that forgiveness literally quiets the brain's emotional centers and strengthens regions associated with empathy and regulation. It's one of the most healing acts the human mind can perform. Then comes trust, perhaps the hardest of all. Trust that not every question needs an answer. Not every silence hides meaning. Not every uncertainty spells danger. Trust that life unfolds even when you don't analyze it. This trust isn't blind. It's built through experience, moments when you stopped worrying and things still worked out. Each time you let go and survive, your brain learns a new lesson. I can be okay without control. Finally, the key to lasting change is gratitude. It may sound simple, but gratitude has a profound neurological effect. When you focus on what's good, your brain releases serotonin and dopamine, chemicals that counteract stress and anchor you in the present. Gratitude doesn't mean ignoring problems. It means balancing your mind's bias toward danger with a conscious recognition of safety and beauty. Over time, gratitude becomes a lens, one that filters life through appreciation rather than fear. When these elements combine awareness, grounding, focus, forgiveness, trust, gratitude, something shifts. The noise in your mind begins to fade, replaced by clarity. The racing thoughts that once felt unstoppable now pass like waves, rising, falling, and disappearing on their own. You start to realize that peace was never something to chase. It was always there, beneath the static, waiting for you to stop listening to the noise. Overthinking teaches you something, too. It reveals how deeply you care, how intensely your mind seeks meaning. The goal is not to destroy that sensitivity, but to refine it, to transform chaos into consciousness. When your thoughts finally serve you, instead of control you, the mind becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a prison, but a tool. And in that moment of stillness, when thought and peace finally coexist, you understand the truth that the greatest thinkers and sages have always known, that the quiet mind isn't empty. It's awake,